What if I told you that somewhere beneath the waves, an ancient civilization didn't just survive its supposed destruction 11,000 years ago, but actually thrived, evolved, and is watching us right now? Picture this. While we've been struggling with climate change, developing crude fossil fuel technologies, and barely managing to keep our cities above rising sea levels, there's an entire advanced society that solved these problems millennia ago. They're living in crystal-domed metropolises on the ocean floor, harnessing the power of thermal vents and possibly laughing at our primitive attempts to explore what they consider their backyard. I'm talking about Atlantis, not the mythical lost city that makes for great adventure movies, but a civilization that might have faked its own extinction to avoid the chaos happening on the surface world. Tonight, we're diving deep into one of history's most tantalizing what-if scenarios. What if Plato wasn't telling us a cautionary tale, but accidentally revealing a truth that was supposed to stay hidden? Before we plunge into these mysterious depths, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Are you somewhere coastal? Perhaps unknowingly close to one of their hidden outposts? Or maybe you're inland, completely unaware that advanced beings might be monitoring our cities through technologies we can't even detect yet? Drop your location in the comments, because by the end of this exploration, you might start looking at the ocean very differently. If you're drawn to these kinds of mind-bending possibilities, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. We explore the hidden connections that reshape how we see our world. And trust me, this particular rabbit hole goes deeper than you might imagine. Now, settle in as we examine not just what this surviving civilization might look like today, but how their existence could completely change everything we think we know about human progress, technology, and our place on this planet. When most people think of Atlantis, they picture Plato's account from around 360 BCE, a powerful island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, more advanced than anything in the known world, destroyed by earthquakes and floods in a single catastrophic day and night. But what if we've been reading this story all wrong? What if the destruction wasn't total, but strategic? Consider the timeline Plato gives us. He claims Egyptian priests told Solon that Atlantis existed 9,000 years before their conversation. That places this civilization at roughly 11,000 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age when sea levels were rising dramatically across the globe. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you had a technologically advanced maritime civilization that could see massive environmental changes coming, what would be your best survival strategy? Going underground? Or in this case, going underwater? Think about it logically. While primitive surface dwellers were struggling to adapt to rising seas and changing climates, an advanced civilization with superior engineering capabilities would have had options we never considered. Instead of fighting the rising waters, they could have embraced them. Instead of trying to maintain surface cities that would inevitably be discovered and potentially conquered by growing human populations, they could have retreated to the one environment that would remain largely unexplored for thousands of years. The ocean depths? Recent advances in marine archaeology have shown us something fascinating about our relationship with the sea. We've mapped less than 20% of the ocean floor in detail. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about our own deep ocean trenches. If a civilization wanted to remain hidden while continuing to develop technologically, the deep sea would be the perfect refuge. But let's dig deeper into what this surviving Atlantis might actually look like today. Based on the original descriptions of their capabilities, we're not talking about a civilization that would have stagnated over 11,000 years. We're looking at a society that would have had a massive head start on human development and has been evolving continuously while we were still figuring out agriculture. The original Atlantis, according to Plato's account, already possessed engineering capabilities that we're only beginning to understand today. They had sophisticated canal systems, precision architecture with those famous concentric rings, and materials science that allowed them to work with metals and stones in ways that seemed almost magical to ancient observers. Imagine where those capabilities would be after 11 millennia of uninterrupted development. Their construction techniques alone would be revolutionary by our standards. Ancient accounts suggest they could shape massive stone blocks with minimal effort, sometimes with a single person doing work that would require our heaviest machinery today. After thousands of years of refinement, their materials science would likely make our strongest alloys look like primitive clay. But construction is just the beginning. A surviving Atlantis would have had to solve problems we're just starting to face. Climate adaptation, sustainable energy, resource management, population control, environmental protection. While we've been burning fossil fuels for barely 2 centuries and are scrambling to find alternatives, they would have developed clean, renewable energy systems that work in harmony with natural ocean processes. Picture cities powered entirely by thermal vents, tidal generators, and bioluminescent organisms. Imagine transportation networks that use ocean currents like highways, with vehicles that move through water as efficiently as dolphins. Consider agricultural systems that farm the sea itself, cultivating everything from kelp forests to specialized fish populations that provide sustainable nutrition without depleting natural ecosystems. Their relationship with marine life would be fundamentally different from ours. While we see the ocean as something to extract resources from, they would have learned to live as part of the ecosystem. They might have developed symbiotic relationships with whales, using their migration patterns for long-distance communication. They could have trained dolphins as scouts or developed technologies that mimic the echolocation abilities of marine mammals for navigation and detection. The medical advances alone would be staggering. The ocean contains organisms with properties we're just beginning to discover. Compounds from deep-sea creatures are already showing promise in treating cancer, developing new antibiotics, and understanding cellular regeneration. A civilization with 11,000 years to study and harness these biological resources might have solved problems like aging, disease, and genetic disorders that we consider inevitable parts of human existence. But here's where things get really intriguing. How would such a civilization view modern humanity? From their perspective, we would appear to be a young, chaotic species that's making many of the same mistakes they learned to avoid thousands of years ago. We're polluting the environment they've spent millennia learning to protect. We're developing weapons technologies that threaten the stability they've worked to maintain. We're expanding into space while remaining ignorant of the advanced civilization that exists in our own oceans. Would they see us as a threat to be managed, as primitives to be guided, or as fellow intelligent beings worthy of contact and cooperation? The answer might depend on how their society evolved morally and philosophically. Plato's original account suggested that Atlantis fell because its people became corrupt, greedy, and aggressive. But what if their near destruction taught them crucial lessons about sustainability, cooperation, and long-term thinking? What if they developed social systems that prevented the kind of moral decay that supposedly led to their downfall? Alternatively, what if isolation and technological superiority bred a sense of superiority that makes them view surface dwellers as inferior? What if they see our environmental destruction and endless conflicts as proof that we're not ready for advanced technology or contact with more developed civilizations? The geopolitical implications would be mind-bending. Here we are, with our surface nations competing for resources and territory, completely unaware that there might be a civilization beneath the waves with technology so advanced that they could influence our weather patterns, disrupt our communications, or even trigger seismic events if they chose to intervene in surface affairs. Their intelligence networks could be unimaginable. While we're just beginning to use satellites and internet surveillance, they might have monitoring systems that track everything happening on the surface world. They could have observation posts disguised as natural underwater formations, positioned near every major coastal city on Earth. Think about all the unexplained phenomena we attribute to natural causes. Unusual weather patterns, mysterious deep-sea sounds, unidentified submerged objects detected by sonar. What if some of these aren't natural at all, but evidence of a civilization that's been carefully observing and occasionally influencing surface events for thousands of years? The technological disparity would be so vast that their interventions might be invisible to us, like how we might influence the behavior of an ant colony without the ants ever realizing an intelligence far greater than their own is involved. This brings us to perhaps the most unsettling question of all. If they've been watching us this entire time, why haven't they made contact? The silence itself might be the most telling aspect of this entire scenario. There are really only a few possibilities here, and none of them are particularly comforting. The first is that they're waiting for us to prove we've evolved beyond the destructive tendencies that nearly wiped them out. Waiting for us to demonstrate that we can manage advanced technology without using it to destroy ourselves and everything around us. From their perspective, we might still be in our infancy as a species, and premature contact could be catastrophic for both civilizations. The second possibility is more disturbing. They've made a calculated decision that we're not worth the risk. They've observed our wars, our environmental destruction, our inability to cooperate even when facing existential threats, and they've concluded that we represent a danger to their carefully maintained underwater paradise. In this scenario, their continued secrecy isn't about protecting us from technologies we're not ready for. It's about protecting themselves from us. But there's a third possibility that's even more chilling. What if they have been making contact, just not in the way we'd expect or recognize? What if some of the technological leaps we attribute to human genius actually came from carefully planted information? What if certain breakthrough discoveries in materials, science, energy production, or marine biology weren't entirely the result of human innovation? Consider how many of our most revolutionary technologies seem to appear almost out of nowhere. The sudden acceleration of computer technology in the mid-20th century. Breakthroughs in understanding quantum physics that seem to defy the natural progression of scientific knowledge. Advances in underwater exploration that allowed us to reach depths we never thought possible. What if some of these weren't accidents or the result of purely human ingenuity? They might have been seeding our technological development, carefully introducing concepts and discoveries that push us in directions they consider safe or beneficial. Not enough to reveal their existence, but just enough to influence our trajectory as a species. It would be the ultimate long-term strategy. Guide us toward technologies that make us less of a threat to the ocean environment while keeping us focused on surface and space exploration rather than deep-sea investigation. This controlled guidance could explain some of the strange patterns we see in technological development, why we've made incredible advances in satellite technology and space exploration, but our deep ocean exploration capabilities remain relatively primitive. Why we've developed sophisticated ways to extract resources from the seafloor, but haven't made corresponding advances in long-term underwater habitation or deep-sea city construction. They might be steering us away from the technologies that would allow us to discover them while encouraging developments that serve their interests. Every major ocean conservation effort, every breakthrough in sustainable energy, every advance that moves us away from technologies that pollute or disrupt marine ecosystems could be part of a carefully orchestrated influence campaign spanning decades or even centuries. The implications for our understanding of human progress would be staggering. How much of what we consider our greatest achievements might actually be guided evolution rather than independent discovery? How many of our scientists, inventors, and innovators might have been unknowingly influenced by information that originated from a source they never suspected existed? And if this is true, it raises an even more profound question. What happens when we reach the point where they can no longer guide us from the shadows? What happens when our technology advances to the level where we inevitably discover them, whether they want to be found or not? We might already be approaching that tipping point. Our deep-sea exploration capabilities are advancing rapidly. Autonomous underwater vehicles can now reach depths and explore areas that were completely inaccessible just a few decades ago. Satellite imaging can detect underwater structures with increasing precision. Sonar mapping is revealing details of the ocean floor that were previously invisible. If there really is a hidden civilization down there, our window of mutual ignorance might be closing fast. And when that moment comes, when surface, humanity, and underwater Atlantis finally meet face to face after 11,000 years of separation, the encounter could reshape everything about how we understand our place in the world. The question isn't just whether they exist, it's whether we're prepared for what contact would mean. Their technology would likely be so advanced that they could appear godlike to us, with capabilities that seem to defy the laws of physics as we understand them. They might have mastered energy sources we've never imagined, developed materials that make our strongest substances look fragile, and created transportation methods that would revolutionize how we think about movement through space and time. But perhaps more importantly, they would represent a completely different model of civilization. While we've built our societies around competition for limited resources, territorial expansion, and technological dominance over nature, they would have spent millennia learning to live in harmony with their environment. Their social structures, their economic systems, their relationship with technology and nature, all of it would be based on principles we might not even recognize as viable. The cultural shock alone could destabilize everything we think we know about progress and development. Imagine learning that while we were celebrating our industrial revolution, they had already moved beyond the need for resource extraction. While we were developing nuclear weapons, they had learned to harness energy sources that don't produce dangerous waste. While we were building cities that consume and pollute, they were creating communities that actually enhance their environment. The psychological impact on humanity would be unprecedented. We'd have to confront the reality that we're not the most advanced intelligence on our own planet. We'd have to grapple with the fact that our entire understanding of technological development and social organization might be fundamentally flawed. We'd have to accept that there's a civilization that's been watching us, perhaps judging us, for thousands of years while remaining completely hidden from our awareness. And then there's the question of what they might want from us, if anything. Would they see first contact as an opportunity to share knowledge and accelerate our development? Would they view it as a necessary intervention to prevent us from destroying the planet they also call home? Or would they see it as a threat to their security that needs to be managed or eliminated? Their response might depend entirely on how we handle the discovery. If we approach them with weapons and demands, treating them as a threat to be conquered or a resource to be exploited, their reaction could be swift and devastating. With 11,000 years of technological advancement, they would likely have capabilities that could neutralize our entire military infrastructure without breaking a sweat. But if we approach them with genuine curiosity, respect, and a willingness to learn, the encounter could usher in a new age of human development that makes our current technological capabilities look like stone tools by comparison. The choice might not even be ours to make. They might have been preparing for this inevitable encounter for centuries, developing protocols and strategies for dealing with surface contact based on their long observation of human behavior. They might already know exactly how they'll respond when the moment comes, while we remain completely unprepared for the most significant event in human history. This scenario becomes even more complex when we consider the environmental crisis we're currently facing. While we're scrambling to address climate change with technologies that are decades away from full implementation, a surviving Atlantis would have been dealing with environmental challenges for millennia. They witnessed the end of the last ice age firsthand. They've seen sea levels rise and fall, ocean temperatures fluctuate, and marine ecosystems adapt to changing conditions over thousands of years. From their perspective, our current climate crisis might seem both predictable and preventable. They would have learned long ago that civilizations that work against natural systems rather than with them inevitably face catastrophic consequences. The very disaster that supposedly destroyed their surface cities would have taught them lessons about sustainability that we're only beginning to understand. But here's what makes this truly fascinating. What if they're not just observing our environmental struggles, but actively working to minimize the damage? Think about some of the unexplained phenomena we've witnessed in recent decades. Unusual deep ocean currents that seem to moderate temperature extremes. Marine ecosystems that recover from pollution faster than scientists predict. Weather patterns that, while still concerning, could have been far more catastrophic if left to develop naturally. What if these aren't just fortunate natural occurrences, but the result of subtle interventions by a civilization that understands ocean systems better than we understand our own atmosphere? They might be running the largest geoengineering project in history, one so sophisticated that we don't even recognize it's happening. Their intervention could explain some of the mysteries that have puzzled climate scientists. Why certain ocean regions seem to absorb more carbon dioxide than models predict. Why some coral reef systems are showing unexpected resilience. Why certain marine species are adapting to changing conditions faster than evolution should allow. If they've been managing ocean systems for thousands of years, they would have technologies and techniques that make our most advanced environmental engineering look primitive. They might have developed ways to accelerate the natural processes that regulate ocean chemistry, temperature, and biodiversity. They could be using biological systems we've never discovered to process pollution and restore damaged ecosystems. But there's a darker side to this environmental management scenario. What if they've decided that humanity itself is the primary threat to the planet's stability? What if their environmental interventions aren't designed to help us, but to limit our impact while they decide what to do about us? Consider the possibility that some of our environmental challenges aren't entirely natural either. What if certain extreme weather events, unusual seismic activities, or mysterious biological phenomena are actually warnings? A way of demonstrating that our current path is unsustainable without revealing the source of that demonstration? It would be the perfect strategy. Create consequences that appear natural, but serve as clear messages about the limits of environmental destruction. Force us to develop cleaner technologies and more sustainable practices, without having to reveal their existence or directly intervene in surface politics. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of this entire scenario: the question of whether we've already encountered evidence of their existence without recognizing it. Throughout history, there have been accounts of unusual underwater phenomena that don't quite fit our understanding of natural processes. Ancient texts describe encounters with beings who emerged from the sea with advanced knowledge. Medieval accounts mention strange lights beneath the waves and impossible underwater structures. Modern reports include sonar readings of massive artificial objects on the ocean floor, underwater sounds that don't match any known natural phenomenon, and deep-sea footage showing geometric patterns that seem too regular to be natural formations. Military sonar operators have detected objects moving underwater at speeds that would be impossible for any known submarine. Deep-sea drilling operations have occasionally encountered materials that don't match the geological composition of their location. Ocean research vessels have recorded acoustic signals that seem to follow patterns, too complex to be random, but too alien to be human. What if these aren't anomalies, equipment malfunctions, or natural phenomena we don't understand yet? What if they're glimpses of a civilization that's usually very careful to remain hidden, but occasionally leaves traces when they're conducting their own research, maintenance, or observation activities? The timing of these encounters is particularly interesting. Many of them seem to occur during periods of significant human technological advancement or environmental crisis, almost as if someone is monitoring our progress more closely during critical moments in our development. During World War II, naval forces reported numerous encounters with unidentified underwater objects that demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything in human arsenals. During the early space race, when we were first developing the technologies to explore beyond our planet, deep-sea research began detecting anomalous readings that had never been observed before. As our satellite imaging capabilities improved and we began mapping the ocean floor in detail, the number of unexplained underwater phenomena actually decreased, as if someone became more careful about avoiding detection. This pattern suggests a level of awareness and adaptation that would be consistent with an advanced civilization that's been carefully monitoring our technological progress. They might have observation protocols that adjust based on our surveillance capabilities, ensuring they remain hidden while still conducting necessary activities. But what kind of activities would an advanced underwater civilization need to conduct? The answer depends on their goals and their relationship with the surface world. If they're primarily focused on their own development and survival, they might be conducting resource extraction, territory expansion, or scientific research that occasionally brings them close to areas where we might detect them. If they're actively managing environmental systems, they might be maintaining underwater installations that regulate ocean temperature, chemistry, or biological processes. These facilities would need periodic maintenance, upgrades, and monitoring that could occasionally result in detectable activity. If they're monitoring human civilization, they might be operating observation posts, communication networks, or data collection systems that bring them into proximity with our shipping lanes, underwater cables, or research operations. The most unsettling possibility is that they're conducting defensive preparations. If they view human expansion into the oceans as a potential threat, they might be developing countermeasures, early warning systems, or protective technologies that could explain some of the more mysterious phenomena we've encountered. Advanced underwater defense systems could account for some of the electronic malfunctions that ships and submarines experience in certain ocean regions. Sophisticated monitoring networks could explain the acoustic anomalies that don't match any known natural or human source. Cloaking or camouflage technologies could explain why satellite imaging and sonar mapping sometimes produce inconsistent results in specific areas. The implications for our own security would be staggering. If there really is an advanced civilization in our oceans, our naval forces, our underwater communication systems, and our deep-sea research operations are all potentially vulnerable to technologies we can't detect or defend against. More importantly, our entire approach to ocean exploration and resource extraction might be happening under the watchful eyes of beings who could intervene at any moment if they decide we're crossing lines we don't even know exist. Every deep-sea mining operation, every underwater military exercise, every attempt to establish permanent underwater installations could be occurring with their permission, tolerance, or despite their objections. This scenario forces us to reconsider our entire relationship with the ocean. We've always thought of it as a vast, largely empty frontier waiting to be explored and exploited. But what if it's actually a populated, managed environment where we're the newcomers and potentially unwelcome intruders? Our plans for underwater cities, deep-sea mining, and marine resource extraction would take on completely different significance if we're not the first intelligent species to consider the ocean as living space. The environmental concerns we're just beginning to understand might be trivial compared to the political and territorial issues we could be creating without realizing it. The technological gap would make negotiation or conflict incredibly one-sided. With 11,000 years of continuous development, their capabilities would likely be so advanced that our most sophisticated weapons would be ineffective against their defenses. Our best surveillance systems might be unable to detect their activities. Our most advanced underwater vehicles might be primitive toys compared to their transportation methods. But perhaps the most profound impact would be on our understanding of intelligence and civilization itself. We've built our entire worldview around the assumption that human intelligence is the pinnacle of evolutionary development on Earth. We've organized our societies, our technologies, and our relationship with the environment based on the belief that we're the most advanced species on the planet. Discovering that we share the Earth with a civilization that's not only more advanced than us, but has been more advanced for thousands of years, would shatter those assumptions completely. It would force us to confront the possibility that our entire approach to technological development, social organization, and environmental management might be fundamentally flawed. We might learn that our competitive, resource extraction-based model of civilization is actually a primitive phase that more advanced societies grow beyond. We might discover that our focus on expanding beyond our planet while neglecting our own oceans represents a kind of developmental dead end that they avoided thousands of years ago. The knowledge transfer potential would be unprecedented. If they chose to share their technologies and insights, we could potentially leap forward thousands of years in our development almost overnight. Medical technologies that could eliminate disease and extend human lifespan indefinitely. Energy systems that could provide unlimited clean power without environmental impact. Transportation methods that could make current travel times seem absurdly slow. Material science that could revolutionize construction, manufacturing, and space exploration. But they might also possess knowledge that would be too dangerous for us to handle responsibly. Technologies that could be weaponized in ways that would make nuclear weapons seem harmless. Genetic manipulation capabilities that could fundamentally alter human biology. Environmental control systems that could be used to terraform entire regions or create devastating natural disasters. Their decision about what to share and what to withhold could determine whether contact leads to a golden age of human development or to our complete subjugation or destruction. The power imbalance would be so extreme that we'd be entirely dependent on their wisdom and restraint. This raises the ultimate question that ties everything together. If this scenario is real, if there really is an advanced Atlantean civilization hiding in our oceans, what happens next? The trajectory of human technological development suggests that contact is inevitable, whether they want it or not. Our deep-sea exploration capabilities are advancing too rapidly for them to remain hidden much longer. When that moment comes, when the two civilizations that have shared the same planet for thousands of years finally meet, the encounter will determine not just the future of human development, but potentially the survival of both species. The choices made in those first moments of contact could echo through history for millennia. And if you think this is all just fascinating speculation, consider this. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are research vessels exploring parts of the ocean that have never been mapped before. There are autonomous submarines diving to depths that were unreachable just a few years ago. There are satellite systems imaging the seafloor with resolution that improves every month. If they're really down there, watching and waiting, they know that time is running out. They know that discovery is inevitable. And they're making preparations for a contact scenario that we can't even begin to imagine. The question isn't whether we'll find them. The question is whether we'll be ready for what we discover when we do. Because once that threshold is crossed, once the secret that's been hidden for 11,000 years finally comes to light, there will be no going back to the world we thought we knew. The ocean suddenly becomes a very different place when you realize we might not be alone down there. Every unexplained sonar reading, every mysterious deep-sea current, every anomalous temperature variation takes on new significance. What we've dismissed as natural phenomena could actually be the subtle fingerprints of a civilization that's been perfecting the art of remaining invisible. But here's where this gets really unsettling. What if their monitoring of us goes far beyond passive observation? What if they've been conducting what we might call social experiments on human civilization for centuries? Think about the patterns of human development over the last few thousand years. We've had periods of remarkable advancement followed by mysterious collapses. Civilizations that seemed destined for greatness suddenly vanishing from history. Technologies that appeared, flourished, then disappeared completely, only to be rediscovered centuries later. The Library of Alexandria burns, taking with it knowledge that wouldn't be recovered for hundreds of years. The Roman Empire, with its advanced engineering and organizational systems, collapses into centuries of technological regression. The Maya, with their sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics, abandon their cities for reasons we still can't explain. What if these weren't random historical accidents, but calculated interventions? A way of preventing surface civilizations from advancing too quickly or in directions that might threaten underwater territories? It would be the ultimate long-term strategy. Allow human societies to develop just enough to remain viable, but prevent them from reaching levels that might lead to deep ocean exploration or technologies that could disrupt marine ecosystems. From their perspective, we might be like children playing with increasingly dangerous toys. Sometimes intervention becomes necessary to prevent us from hurting ourselves or others. A strategic plague here, a convenient natural disaster there, the mysterious disappearance of key technologies or knowledge bases, all designed to keep us focused on surface conflicts and developments while staying away from the deep waters they call home. So, the next time you stand at the edge of the ocean, listening to the waves crash against the shore, remember that you might be looking at the border of a civilization that's been watching us longer than we've been watching the stars. Whether they're waiting for us to prove we're worthy of contact, preparing defenses against our inevitable expansion into their domain, or simply documenting the rise and fall of yet another surface species, one thing remains certain. The age of secrets is ending, and the choices we make in the coming decades will determine whether our first contact with a truly advanced civilization becomes humanity's greatest triumph or its final chapter.